welcome to the Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always, here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I go for a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. Today, we're going to be going over cinematics within WoW, or within or without WoW, I should say, because there are a lot of cinematics that don't actually come from the game itself. They are either expansion cinematics and stuff like that. But as always, we will get into the weekly news first. So we have the world bosses for this week, which is Nurgash Muckformed, Morgeth and Antros. All three world bosses are up. Make sure you kill them, get your conduits, anima, gear, whatever you need, whether it be progress for your patterns within Patterns Quest, kill Antros, whether it be the Jailer's Efforts, then you kill Morgeth, or if you just need a simple conduit upgrade, then Nurgash is probably one to go for. The bonus event for this week is Battlegrounds, so you get increased honor for doing Battleground events. So if you want some extra honor to upgrade your gear, whether you're missing out a couple upgrades on your weapon or your headpiece, chest piece, whatever it is, make sure you head in there, PvPers, and go grab them upgrades. The brawl for this week is Classic Ashran, so Ashran is up 24/7. It will only end if you manage to kill the opposing faction's leader. So, head on in there. There is no reinforcements. It is just a constant go in, earn some honor, and then leave whenever you're ready and stuff like that. It is a nice way to earn some just passive honor and chill out. Ashran is good, and to be honest, it's not too bad, to be honest. Ashran is one of them things that I think is looked back on purely because it was in Warlords of Draenor, but if you put it into the grand scheme of things, Ashran was a constant ongoing battleground that you didn't have to wait for, like Wintergrasp or Tol Barad and stuff like that. And I think it's, actually something that is really good, in my opinion, and it's definitely something that you can look to do if you just got an entire day free, want to have some fun with friends and stuff like that. You can really experience it, as it isn't your typical PvP battleground. So, we have the mythic affixes for this week, which is Tyrannical, which means that the boss and the boss mobs that are spawned have increased health and damage. Raging, so make sure that you burst them when they get to below 30%, I believe, as they have 100% increased damage, or you soothe them, you take off their enrage effect. Volcanic, just make sure you're not standing on the volcanoes. It applies to in-game as well as real life. And Encrypted, the seasonal affix, where you can... wait, am I missing something? Encrypted is definitely what I think it is. Yeah, you kill the relics, I believe, and yeah, you get a certain buff depending on the relics. And the ability that we're going to be looking at the history of this week is Chaos Bolt. Chaos Bolt is one of my favourite abilities, I'm not going to lie, because, well, Warlock has had a rise in popularity due to Trinket. They're slowly going down now due to that Trinket being nerfed. But Chaos Bolt has been at the epicenter of Destro Warlocks for a while, and the current season of PvP is 2 Chaos Bolts to just end someone's existence in an arena, as it were. So, when was Chaos Bolt introduced? Chaos Bolt was introduced in patch 3.0 with Wrath of the Lich King in 2008. It got its first change in 3.1, which was several months later, and what it did was this spell no longer ignores damage reduction effects to the target, which is crazy, by the way. Imagine having like a pain suppression on you for 40% damage reduction, and then Chaos Bolt is just like, yeah, I don't care about that. That's absolutely stupid. What do you think I'm doing here? So, yeah, that is kind of crazy that it ignored all damage reduction. I get that it can ignore like certain fire resistance and all of that because it is chaos damage, but ignore damage reduction is stupid, in my opinion. It wasn't touched for the rest of Wrath of the Lich King. So in Cataclysm, In patch 4.0, you had the damage has been reduced by approximately 12%, a little bit of a nerf to Chaos Bolt right there. Wasn't touched throughout the entirety of Cataclysm as well. Mr. Pandaria saw the next change 2 years later. It was redesigned. It now costs Burning Embers instead of mana and causes shadow instead of fire damage. It no longer has a cooldown and always critically strikes. No longer ignores resistances or absorb effects. So, a bit weird. So, Burning Embers are generated by casting Incinerate, and they are consumed by Chaos Bolt to deal damage, or Ember Tap to heal you. This was very much a Mr. Pandaria thing. It is very much transformed into Soul Shards as we know it now. But yeah, this is the start of it will always be critically hitting. In Wrath of the Lich King Cataclysm, it wasn't the case, and if you got a crit with it, it would probably kill someone, to be honest. But they just slightly adjusted the damage for it. The next update that you got for it was a year later in patch 5.4, and this was the damage has been increased by 15%, just a straight up 15% damage increase to Chaos Bolt. Then the year later, in Warlords of Draenor, it had a small hotfix, which was Chaos Bolt now deals 33% more damage in PvP combat. Very nice buff for PvP. And a very slight tweak, again in Warlords of Draenor, about several months later, for its damage increase it has a damage increase of 5% again. So it seems like Chaos Bolt damage didn't really get much love later on in expansions. It didn't scale as well as many people think. When it was introduced in Wrath, a lot of people were getting absolutely destroyed by it. It was quite funny. But yeah, as you go through the expansions, it just seems to have dropped off, and the scaling of it isn't necessarily what it used to be. In patch 7.0, Legion, this was a year after the small hotfix. It now costs 2 soul shards and inflicts chaos damage instead of shadow, and the damage has been increased by 26% again. So this is the start of where it used soul shards instead of the burning embers. To be honest, I don't really remember much of the burning embers because I didn't play Warlock back then, but soul shards are where it is currently today. They had a lot of hotfixes over the course of Legion, so go through them, but it will only be, this is over the course of actually 5 months. It had 5 sort of changes, 6 changes. Oh my god. So the first change was Chaos Bolt should no longer interfere with boss abilities when combined with the Reverse Entropy talent. The Reverse Entropy talent is, I believe it's the one that... okay. Chaos Bolt and Rain of Fire restore 35% of your maximum mana and deal 10% increased damage. I didn't think Warlocks ran out of mana that badly. That's very interesting, to be honest with you. So the next patch was just another damage increase by 11% for Chaos Bolt. And in patch 7.1, it is now learned at level 12, down from level 26. Mainly because it is the main ability for Destro Warlocks. So you had 110 levels to get in Legion. Makes sense that you get used to it at an early sort of level. The next hotfixes were Chaos Bolt now deals an additional 35% damage against players, was 20%. Chaos Bolt deals normal damage in PvP situations. It was an additional 10% damage. Again, these are just small hotfixes. And then Chaos Bolt's damage has been increased by 25% in PvP situations. Chaos Bolt really didn't get a lot of love in any PvP situation over the course of like the later expansions since Wrath of the Lich King, really. Going into patch 7.2.5, about a few months later, Chaos Bolt's damage increased by 40% and the projectile speed increased by 25%. Chaos Bolt cast from the Chaos Bolt Rift now does 60% increased damage. They buffed Chaos Bolt by an insane amount over the years in terms of its damage. And then finally in Battle for Azeroth was the very last change to Chaos Bolt, has now received a new visual animation. So the damage hasn't been touched by Blizzard since 7.2.5, which was 5 years ago now. Yeah, actually, nearly 5 years ago to the day I'm looking at it. It was on the 13th of the 6th that it was, or 13th of the 6th, 2017. Yeah, nearly 5 years to the day is when the last actual big change for Chaos Bolt happened, which is, that's quite spooky, to be honest with you. But that is the history of Chaos Bolt. Again, it's one of my most favourite abilities, mainly because it is just so unique in what it does. And there are a few quirks that you can have with it currently in Shadowlands with the double Chaos Bolt damage going through. But let's get into the actual meat and bones of the podcast, cinematics in and around WoW. You have 3 different types that I've sort of broken down. You have the in-game cinematics, such as spoilers for anyone who, hasn't done Shadowlands or whatever, or you don't want to hear it. But such as a Ysera cinematic when leveling, you have expansion cinematics, and you have small, very cutscenes, such as at the start of the expansion, you have the jailer, when you're in the moor and he throws Bane off of the cliff. You have very small cutscenes that sort of progress the narrative a little bit more, or just to break it up, like the amount of questing and stuff like that. Whereas the in-game cinematics, the one that I said first, are mainly there to congratulate a player on finishing a certain quest line or something like that. The small cutscenes are very much to break it up. So what do? The in-game cinematics are there to make you feel, pretty much. They're there to make you, or congratulate you on completing a long quest chain, or to just to move the narrative along in terms of the lore and the storyline. There's very much a lot of people, or a lot of lore used to come from the books, and still does, to be honest. It kind of sets up a lot of the stuff. So if you look at Battle for Azeroth, and if you look at, what was it? Warlords of Draenor. Warlords of Draenor, I didn't necessarily understand why we were going to Warlords of Draenor or Draenor, mainly because it was all said within the book. Now, I did my questing through the Outlands, old Outlands called Draenor, and I came across Garrosh Hellscream in Nagrand, and I had to fight him, or Thrall had to fight him, and I was very confused because Garrosh was the last boss of Mr. Pandaria. So I was like, hold on, haven't we already killed this guy? And if this is an alternate timeline, 35 years late or before, I believe, shouldn't he not even be born yet? It's kind of like a weird sort of narrative that never got explained, or probably did get explained through quests, but I myself don't read quest text, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm that person that just picks them up, goes and gets my XP. I'd recommend actually reading the quest. There is a lot of lore within the quest itself, and it does tell a good story. But yeah, I'm quite ashamed that I don't read the quests, I'm not going to lie. So yeah, a lot of the lore came through books, and it set up expansions, whole expansions they set up, like, what was it? War of... Crime Wars? I feel like it's Crime Wars, or War Crimes. War Crimes, I think, is the name of the book, which leads into Warlords of Draenor. It was Garrosh's trial in Mr. Pandaria that set up the events that led us into that expansion. So a lot of these in-game cinematics are there to give you sort of a massive narrative on what you've been doing in the quest line. The Ysera one, again, I will go back to that as my sort of reference point. You've gone through the Ardenweald zone, and you not necessarily know what you're doing. You're moving this egg about randomly. There's just this giant egg that you're wanting to bring back, and you don't really care. You're just doing the quest. You're, getting your XP, and then you get this cinematic, and it's a couple minutes cinematic, and it shows Ysera's rebirth, and this is all what it was leading up to. You were protecting or reinvigorating this seed so that it doesn't die out because of the anima drought. And it's the ending of a storyline, and you can gather what that storyline was just via the cinematic, which is amazing. And they do that throughout all of Shadowlands, if I'm not mistaken. I'm trying to remember what the Maldraxxus one is. Oh god. The Revendreth one was where Sardathrius sent Anima into the Maw to kickstart Shadowlands and all of the baddies and stuff. Kyrian. Oh god. Can't remember the Bastion one or the Maldraxxus one. Is that really bad? I feel like that's really bad. Yeah, it's not great. The only thing that I remember from them ones is like Crexus dying and stuff like that, Draka getting a bit annoyed and all of that. So you see how impact or how much of an impact these in-game cinematics have, because they stick with people who learn through visual a lot more so than, doing the quests and all of that stuff. Because I remember, Revendreth, and I remember the Ardenweald quest lines. I can't for the life of me remember the Bastion or the Maldraxxus quest lines, which is bad. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty bad. So sorry, Maldraxxus and Bastion, but just didn't cut it for me. Yeah, they're there to make you feel. They're there to progress the story and stuff like that. Small cutscenes are very much ones to break up the questing, and it's to give you a little bit of a sort of, oh my god, this is the bad guy in the zone. Okay, I get it. Like, he's a bit of a dickhead. We want to deal with him as quickly as possible and stuff like that. It's nice to. It's like a small break. It's like a forced break. Obviously, you can skip the cinematic, but they're usually only like 10, 15 seconds long, these ones that I'm talking about. And it is a nice break because you get a little bit of a reward. You get a sort of nugget of a reward, as it were, as to what you're currently doing and, where the storyline is progressing to, because it furthers that storyline. So Jailer drops Bane off of a hill and you have to heal Bane up and make sure that his soul is fine and all of that. But again, it's more to break up the hour of questing that you've done before that. I say hour, it's probably more like 20 to 30 minutes. But if it's the first time going through the zone, you're probably taking it a bit slower. You're probably, taking in the atmosphere like at the start of an expansion. Everyone's taking it a bit slower, taking in the backdrop and the music and, just where mobs are. Mobs are actually kind of scarce to come by, so it might take you a bit longer to do quests because everyone's farming them, stuff like that. That's there to break it up and to keep you intrigued and keep you going, pretty much. It's, time for you to get a drink of water or have a little snack or something like that. Now, big cinematics that everyone loves are expansion cinematics. We've had Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King, Cataclysm. I completely missed out an expansion cinematic. Cataclysm, Mists of Pandaria, Warlords of Draenor, Legion, Battle for Azeroth, Shadowlands. Now, each of these expansions, everyone has their own favourite expansion, obviously, and each have their own favourite sort of cinematic or cinematic expansion reveal. Now, I can recall each and every single one of these expansion cinematics. They are very well put together. They introduce... Wait, do they introduce the big bad in them? You have Illidan, who isn't necessarily the last boss of Burning Crusade, but he is a big bad in Burning Crusade. You have Arthas, big bad in Wrath of the Lich King. Deathwing for Cataclysm. Mists of Pandaria, you had a panda. I'm not too sure they were the big bad, so that one's not quite true. Warlords of Draenor did show Gul'dan and Manaroth and stuff. It didn't show Archimonde, but, it showed where it was going to go. It was going to go in the path of the Legion. No, it just showed sort of, a Legion. Battle for Azeroth didn't really give much hints as well. The Battle for Azeroth one was... I actually can't remember the BFA one. I've given all of this talk about remembering them all, but I honestly can't remember them, or that one specifically. That one slipped my mind. I bet you if I like went on WoW, watched it right now, I could do it word for word, like say whatever's in it word for word. But what I do remember from Battle for Azeroth is that when you first go to the places, you get that small in-game cinematic where it's a minute or two long, and it's Jaina hearing the ghost, or like her younger self and the ghost of her father and stuff like that. So cinematics do sit with you, and most expansion cinematics do. I think the only reason I don't enjoy I remember the Warlords of Draenor one, the Battle for Azeroth one, is because it was kind of where it was kind of like a break. It was an on and off thing with Battle for Azeroth for me. It wasn't necessarily my most engaging expansion, so it wasn't necessarily going to stick in my mind as much as, say, Wrath of the Lich King. Oh, what an expansion that was. I remember I literally just started playing WoW, by the way, and I was very young, but I still remember Halls of Reflection coming out, Pit of Sauron, and what's the other one? Halls of Reflection, Pit of Sauron, and the Well of Souls, or the something Soul. I forget what it is, but it had 2 bosses, and it was just a very long sort of dungeon. But the first boss did drop a really good bag, so when Wrath Classic comes out, make sure you go into there and get that bag. It is very good. It's on par with like Oni bag and stuff like that. Very, very good. But yeah, I remember killing Arthas at the end of it. It was just so good. But these expansion cinematics are meant to get you hyped. They're meant to distill a bit of hope in you for WoW going forward. And they're there to sort of reignite the flame that you have that you might have lost due to WoW not being what it once was for you, in your opinion, what it could have been but hasn't for the past few years, and you've had you've been flirting around with WoW for a bit. You might come back, you might not. It's meant to really push you towards, come back, give it a try when the new expansion comes out. Dragonflight looks really good. I'm not taken by the cinematic for Dragonflight, but it did have that moment of, yes, this might be very good when, well, I'm not going to spoil it, but near the end when, it all went, I don't know how to describe it without spoiling. Near the end, it was like, yes, this can be a very good expansion and this can do something for World of Warcraft. And the systems that they introduce after a WoW cinematic or expansion cinematic also stick with you. So the Shadowlands ones, I remember them talking about covenants, and you'll be a member of this covenant. It will be a really important choice. In Legion, I remember them talking about the artifact weapons, and you'll have your own artifact weapon, and it will be really important and stuff like that, and you'll level it up through artifact power. In like I said, Battle for Azeroth, I'm pretty sure they went through Azerite gear, but it was such a bad experience that I've kind of blocked that out mentally. For Cataclysm, they went through all of these things that weren't even in the game, but I remember. So Path of the Titans was meant to be one, where it was kind of like the glyph system, but it wasn't. It was meant to be like a different talent tree and stuff like that, but they never got, or it was never introduced. I remember them going through it, and they introduced archaeology into was it archaeology in Cata or Wrath? Pretty sure it was in Cata, because Inscription was in Wrath of the Lich King, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, the cinematics are memorable, but it's also what ties into the cinematics, like Covenants for Shadowlands, like artifact weapons for Legion. You'll remember it with that cinematic, and they're meant to get you hyped. They're meant to have an impact. They're meant to make you feel like, yes, okay, this is going to be a great expansion, and sort of give you that copium that people tell you. Now, copium's great. Copium is just basically hope. But yeah, you just gotta roll with it. Cinematics in WoW, great. They're really good to break up what you're doing, to move the narrative, to just get you hyped. All of them work, but I think a lot of people, more than anything, like the just expansion cinematics and the in-game one, especially in-game that it's got your character in, because it makes you feel like you're a part of the living, breathing world of Warcraft. And you can be wearing anything. You can wear the Wendigo like onesie transmog, but your character's in there. You might stick out like a sore thumb in that cinematic, but your character's in there, and by God, you've done all the work to get in that cinematic, so you better enjoy it in your Wendigo onesie. It's one of them things. They're great. They're really well made, and they should... It's a treat for us when cinematics get made, especially in-game ones, like small in-game ones. There's been a few in the latest patch. There was 3, I believe. There was one with Kalia and Lillian Voss, which is really good. You have one with Sylvanas and Anduin, and you have one more. Oh, there's no way I'm going to forget it. But yeah, there's loads of cinematics that they bring out. If you go through all of the cinematics that WoW have done, you'll see the progression over time and stuff that they do before expansions. These aren't expansion cinematics. These are ones that introduce characters within the expansion. Now, this started with Warlords of Draenor. It was a series called Lords of War, and there were 5 or 6 different videos on YouTube, all of them able to watch. But Lords of War, they introduce specific characters within the expansion, and they basically introduce their backstory, why they are like they are, and stuff like that. And it is amazing. They did the same for Legion with the Harbingers. They did the same for Battle for Azeroth with the... Were they the Harbingers? No. They did that for Warbringers, for Battle for Azeroth. Shadowlands, they did the Shadowlands ones with Bastion. I forget what they're called, but Bastion, Maldraxxus, Revendreth, and the other zone, Ardenweald. They did them for. And they'll do some for Dragonflight. I imagine they'll do some for each individual Dragonflight. So red Dragonflight, green, blue, bronze, and they will probably do a Rathian one for the black Dragonflight. If they do 5, they'll do each for each Dragonflight. But more than likely, they've settled on 3. Like the past few expansions, so I think they'll just stick with 3. They'll do Rathian, Alexstrasza, and then they wouldn't do a Khadgar one again. I don't know. I don't know who the third one would be, but that would be my guess. But cinematics in WoW make WoW more immersive. They give you hope. They make you feel something when playing the game as well. After a long quest line, it is like a reward. They're meant to make you feel hyped, progress story. There's many reasons why they're in the game, but they are very well made, or most of them are very well made cinematics, especially the ones that have my character in a Wendigo onesie in that same cinematic when something very serious is happening. But yeah, that is all for this week. Thank you all very much for tuning in. Do check out all of the social medias down below. They're all there. Just go check them out at your free will. Thank you all very much for listening once again, and go a valor friend. Goodbye all.